Hello, my name is Catherine Hirth, and I'm a financial educator at MSU Federal Credit Union. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about making money and the road to financial freedom. Let's go ahead and get started. So before we really dive in, I want to define the word income. This may be a word that you've heard before, or maybe not, and that's okay, but I think it's important that we define it. So income is payment received in exchange for work, money coming into your account, oftentimes that you receive in exchange for work. It's also the first step in creating a budget. So as a financial educator, we oftentimes will tell people the best way to create a budget. And the first step is always figuring out how much money you have coming in. That's how you determine what you can afford, right? So having income is crucial to budgeting and financial independence. Next up, let's talk about why we work, why we want that income. I think the most obvious answer is that we want financial independence, right? So as we get older, we may start to pay for more things on our own, things like transportation and food, school, fun things that we need or want, and things like that. So financial independence is one of the biggest reasons why people work. The other thing that I think is important to mention is that it provides a sense of fulfillment. So it makes you feel like you're positively impacting the community, and that it gives you a way to make friends and connect with people, and just gives you that sense of fulfillment, which is awesome. So let's talk about the hiring process. This can be kind of an intimidating topic, but I think it's important that we talk about the job search and other things that go into it. So first up, the job search. I think a good way to start is to think about what's important to you when it comes to a job. So some of those things might include what hours you work. I'll give you an example for myself. When I was in high school and college, I always worked in retail, which required me to work a lot of nights and weekends, which is okay, but it caused me to miss out on some social gatherings and social interactions. And again, it was a way for me to make money, and I had that financial independence. But if I could go back and do it again, I might look for a position where I could work Monday through Friday, certain hours, so I didn't have to miss out on as many weekend activities. Another thing that might come to mind is your pay. So I think this is a huge one that a lot of people will consider, how much you could potentially make at your job. So for this, if pay is something that's really, really important to you, you might look for a job that has a higher earning potential. What comes to mind for me is maybe working as a server at a restaurant. Those people make a small hourly wage, but the bulk of their income is from tips that they make. So they have a higher earning potential because the harder they work and the more tables they serve and the better service they provide, they have the potential to make more money. So that is one thing you might think about if you are interested in higher earning potential. Another thing you might think about is skill set. What is it that you'll be doing? So maybe you really enjoy being outdoors in the wilderness. You might look for a job at a park or a garden or somewhere where you can be outdoors and learn more and apply those skills that you already have. So those are some things you might think about. Next up, where to start the job search. So some things that come to mind for this are online. There are tons of different websites and apps that you can use to look for different job postings. You might also just walk into businesses that you're interested in working at and just ask if they're hiring and ask if they have a job application. That might be a good route, and it shows that you have the initiative, and it also allows that potential employer to put a face to the job application. So it kind of personalizes it a little bit more. You might also talk with family or friends and see if anybody has job openings at their places of work or if they know anybody else. Having a really strong network of connections is huge for finding a new job. Next up, the application process. So you've found a handful of jobs that you're interested in. What goes into the application process? So some things that you might include are an application. So this is kind of your basic information. It will usually include your name, date of birth, address, any experience that you have or references you might have and things like that. Another thing you might include is a resume. So this is a chance for you to expand on your application and include skill sets that you have and a little bit more detail about experiences that you have and things like that. Another possibility is a cover letter, and this is something that not all jobs require, but some do require it, and if they don't, you can always just include one anyway. But it's basically a short letter, maybe about a page, where you tell your future employer why you deserve the position. And it can seem a little awkward at first to kind of brag about yourself and tell them why you deserve the position, but you're your own best advocate in this case, and telling them straight out why you deserve that position is in your best interest. So don't be afraid to really talk about yourself and your accomplishments and be proud of those things in your cover letter. So after you submit all that material, you may be contacted for an in-person interview, or even over the phone. Some positions may be over the phone or in person. So during the interview process, you'll sit down with your future employer, maybe one-on-one, or maybe there'll be other people in the job interview, and they'll ask you questions about why you should be given the opportunity to work at that place of employment, what your strengths are, potentially what your weaknesses are, and then you also have the opportunity to ask them any questions you might have about working for them. So it's a really great opportunity to just sit down one-on-one and figure out if it's a good fit. What I would definitely recommend prior to the interview is looking up popular interview questions and practicing with a family member or a friend. That will be huge for you when you actually sit down for the interview, because it can be a lot of pressure. But if you practice ahead of time and you have a few scenarios you can pull from and answers to questions in your back pocket, it'll make it a lot easier for you. So next up, we're going to break down different ways to get paid. So the two most popular ones we're going to talk about are hourly and salary. So to get started, hourly is when someone is paid a set amount for every hour they work. So if a person works more, they're paid more. If they work less, they're paid less. I'll give you an example. We have a person named Janelle, and she makes $10 an hour. She works 20 hours in 1 week. She earns $200. The cool thing about hourly is that if she works more hours, say her job is really super busy 1 week, and she has a chance to work 30 hours, she has the potential to work 30 hours, make $10 for each of those hours, and get paid $300. On the flip side, if her job is really slow and there just aren't enough hours that they don't need her to work, she could have less hours in a week, and then she can't rely on that. She can't always rely on that $200. Say she works 5 hours a week, she only makes $50. So that could throw kind of a wrench in her budget and be difficult for her to plan. The other way that people are paid is salary. So that means that someone is paid a set amount in a time frame. That time frame is usually a year. So if the individual is paid the same amount, no matter how much more or how much less they work. In this example, we have Melanie. Melanie is paid $12,000 annually, so $12,000 per year. And what her employer will do is break that down into smaller paychecks. She's paid monthly. She'll make, we know she makes $12,000 per year. There are 12 months in a year, so she makes $1,000 per month, no matter how much more or how much less she works. I'm going to break it down a little bit further so we can kind of compare it to Janelle, and we'll say that there are 4 weeks in every month. So she makes $250 per week. Now, if she works more, she doesn't necessarily make more. If she works less, she still makes the same amount, which is kind of a cool perk. But she doesn't have that potential to work really hard if they're really busy and make an extra amount of money. So both hourly and salary have their pros and cons, but those are the two common ways that people are paid. Next up, we're going to take it one step further, and we're going to talk about deductions. And this is kind of a complex topic. It can be kind of confusing, but I'm going to do my best to break it down. So some common types of deductions, and a deduction is money taken out of your paycheck. So we're going to talk about that. So common types of deductions, income tax. That is money paid to the government for use of different programs and services in the community. So programs and services that we all use on a regular basis, but maybe don't pay for when we use them, are paid for using income tax. So every single person in the United States who earns money by working in the US is required to pay income tax. And there are 3 different types. I'm going to break it down. There's federal income tax. So every single person in the country that works and earns money from working is required to pay federal income tax. From there, most states have a state income tax. And Michigan, where I am now, and I'm guessing a lot of you are, does have a state income tax. So people that live and work in Michigan pay a federal income tax and a state income tax. And then we're going to break it down one step further, and there's a local income tax. So that means that some cities have their own tax. Not every single city in Michigan has local income tax, but some do. So everybody in the US pays federal tax. Everybody in Michigan pays state tax. And then some cities in Michigan, depending on where people live and work, have a local tax as well. So that's money that's taken out of your paycheck before you actually get it into your bank account. Other deductions are things like Social Security. So that is a kind of a big pool of money that everybody pays into. And then when people come to a certain age and retire, they are paid out of that fund. So, and they paid it while they were working and then they retire. So then they get a portion of money out of that fund. Another type of deduction that is included on income tax or on our paycheck is Medicare. So this is for health care for individuals 65 or older, and it helps to pay for some of their medical bills. So that's another type of deduction that is taken out of everybody's paycheck. Some other optional deductions are health insurance. So many people's employers offer health insurance, but maybe they don't pay for all of it, and you as the employee are required to pay for a portion of it, so that health insurance may come out of your paycheck. And then also retirement contributions. So if you are saving money for retirement down the road and you're putting money into a certain type of account, that may come out of your paycheck before you actually get that into your bank account. So how do we differentiate between pre-income tax and post-income tax? I'm glad you asked. So we're going to talk about gross pay and net pay. Gross pay is payment before taxes and other deductions are removed from your paycheck. So we're going to go back to our example with Janelle, where she makes $10 an hour and she works 20 hours in 1 week. During that week, Janelle earns $200 and her gross pay is $200. So she earned $200 working 20 hours, making $10 an hour. Her gross pay is $200. We're then going to transition to net pay. So her gross pay is $200 and then deductions are taken out. So net pay is payment received by an employee after taxes and other deductions are removed from their paycheck. So again, we're going to look at Janelle. So she makes $10 an hour and works 20 hours in 1 week. That week, Janelle earns $200, and we've already covered this, that's her gross pay. We're going to assume, and there's no way for me to know for sure based on where she lives or where she works and things like that. There's no standard formula to figure out what amount of deductions will be, but we're going to assume that she has $70 deducted from her paycheck. So that would be her federal income tax that everybody pays, her state income tax because she lives in Michigan and she has to pay income tax, state income tax, her local income tax because she lives in a city where they pay local income tax, and then Social Security, Medicare, and if she has to pay health insurance or retirement contributions. So that's all included in that $70. That means that by the time Janelle actually receives her paycheck and actually has that money deposited into her bank account, she receives $130. And the best way to remember this is that that's the amount she catches in her net after everything else filters through. So she has $200 that's dropping down, and then certain things are taken out for taxes, and then the amount she catches in her net is $130. So that's a good way to remember it. All right, thanks for joining us today. I hope this was helpful when you're starting to think about, getting your first job, or if you're already at a job. I hope this helped explain some things. Be sure to fill out the worksheet. If you need to go back through and watch the video again to kind of fill in some of the answers, that's okay. But we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.